Have you ever felt that there are truths buried so deeply that even history itself seems afraid to remember them? And have you ever wondered if what was dismissed as superstition and heresy might actually be the very knowledge that awakens the soul? By the end of this journey, you will understand why entire civilizations fought to suppress certain teachings, and why those same teachings may hold the key to your own inner awakening. You will not only see how rejected knowledge shaped the destiny of the West, you will feel how its whispers still call to you today, urging you to remember what was never meant to be forgotten. Welcome, seeker of forgotten truths. Before we step into these shadows together, pause for a moment. If you value journeys into hidden wisdom, let your first act of presence be a simple one. Press the like button. It is a gesture that tells the algorithm, and more importantly, yourself, that you are ready to walk into mystery. You step into a corridor of history where the voices of prophets and philosophers still echo. In late antiquity, the twilight of the Greco-Roman world, a figure emerged who was neither fully Greek nor Egyptian, but something beyond both. Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great. His name was a fusion of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. To the ancients, Hermes was credited with unveiling the secrets of astrology, the hidden forces of nature, and the ascent of the soul toward the divine. His writings, later gathered into the Corpus Hermeticum, a collection of 17 mystical dialogues, spoke of a cosmos alive with divine mind, where every soul was a fragment of celestial fire longing to return to its source. Imagine holding those texts for the first time. They did not read like cold philosophy. They spoke in the language of revelation. You are not a creature of dust alone. You are a child of eternity. The stars are not distant ornaments, but mirrors of the spirit. For early readers, these words were nothing less than a call to awaken. At first, even Christian thinkers treated this wisdom with reverence. Writers like Lactantius and Augustine quoted Hermes as if he were a pagan prophet whose words hinted at a primordial theology. The teachings of soul purification, of a luminous word through which the cosmos came to be, seemed strangely parallel to their own scriptures. But reverence slowly turned into suspicion. By the 4th century, Augustine denounced Hermes as a deceiver, a sorcerer who seduced minds into idolatry. And so began the long exile of Hermetic wisdom. This pattern would repeat again and again. What begins as awe soon becomes threat. What inspires becomes forbidden. This is the rhythm of rejected knowledge, a phrase scholars today use to describe how Western culture defined itself by casting aside anything that did not fit within the boundaries of church doctrine or Enlightenment rationality. Philosopher Wouter Hanegraaff calls it the Academy's dustbin of rejected knowledge. Yet what is rejected does not vanish. It waits. It lingers like embers beneath ash. You may ask, why did authorities fear these teachings? Why burn books and silence voices if they were merely fantasies? Because knowledge is power, not just power over nature, but power over the meaning of life itself. To say that the human soul could ascend through hidden wisdom was to challenge the monopoly of salvation claimed by the Church. To suggest that the cosmos was infinite, alive with spirit, was to undermine the fragile authority of official doctrine. Think of your own life. How often have you been told that certain questions should not be asked, that certain intuitions are irrational. The same mechanism that silenced Hermes echoes even now. Accepted culture defines itself by pushing away what it cannot control. Every time you have felt a quiet intuition, only to dismiss it because reason or society demanded otherwise, you have reenacted this ancient drama of suppression. But this was only the beginning. The tradition of hidden wisdom did not die with Augustine's condemnations. It survived in the whispers of Gnostics, in the veiled language of alchemists, in the mystical diagrams of Kabbalists. It was preserved not by institutions, but by seekers, people like you, who refused to let the flame go out. As you follow this thread through history, you begin to see the paradox. What is dismissed as superstition often holds the deepest insights into the human condition. Hermetic writings, though buried for centuries, describe the cosmos as a living unity, what modern science might call interconnectedness, and what spirituality calls oneness. The Emerald Tablet, attributed to Hermes, speaks the words, "As above, so below." This simple phrase has echoed through centuries of alchemy, symbolizing that what happens in the heavens is reflected in your own being. And pause here for a moment. Have you not felt that? When you look at the stars, when you sense the vastness of existence mirrored in your own heart, is it not the same truth, that you are both small and infinite? This is why rejected knowledge awakens souls, because it reminds you of what culture teaches you to forget. If you are feeling this resonance, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever sensed a truth that society told you to ignore? Your story may echo the very pattern we are about to trace, the long path of hidden wisdom making its way back into the light, because Hermes was only the threshold. Soon, you will meet those who carried his torch. The mystics branded as heretics, the philosophers burned for daring to dream of infinity, and you will see how every attempt to silence them only made their words burn brighter. But that is only the beginning. You take another step, and the silence deepens. The world you thought you knew begins to fracture, and behind the cracks you glimpse another current, secret streams of wisdom that refuse to die even when hunted. Until now, you've only stood at the doorway. Here you cross into the chamber where voices long suppressed begin to speak again. What were these voices? They belong to those called Gnostics, to Jewish mystics who preserved the Kabbalah, and to daring thinkers like Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, who tried to weave all hidden sciences into a single tapestry of truth. Each represents not merely forgotten doctrines, but the drama of humanity itself, the refusal to let the soul be silenced. Imagine the early centuries of Christianity. Communities scattered across the Mediterranean wrote texts, not about rules and creeds, but about direct encounter with the divine spark inside the human being. This was Gnosticism, from gnosis, meaning knowledge, but not the kind you memorize in books. It was knowledge of the heart, knowledge born of awakening. The Gnostics taught that within you dwells a shard of the divine, a light that has fallen into the prison of matter. Salvation, they said, was not obedience to dogma, but remembrance of who you truly are. The Gospel of Thomas, one of the texts later unearthed at Nag Hammadi, whispers, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you." But these teachings threatened the young church, for they bypassed the hierarchy of bishops and priests. Every soul could awaken directly. Who needed the gatekeepers? And so, Gnostic writings were condemned, destroyed, labeled heresy. For centuries, we knew them only through hostile accounts, until the jars of Nag Hammadi broke open in 1945, spilling their voices back into the world. Pause here. Have you ever felt that same inner contradiction, the sense that the truest wisdom you carry cannot always be spoken aloud because society is not ready to hear it? That was the fate of the Gnostics. Their knowledge was not false. It was rejected. Meanwhile, within Judaism, another current flowed. The Kabbalah. At its heart stood the Zohar, the radiant book of splendor written in 13th century Spain. It unveiled a vision of reality structured through 10 Sephiroth, emanations of divine energy that link the infinite with the finite, heaven with earth. Imagine a cosmic tree whose branches are the powers of mercy, justice, wisdom, and beauty, and whose roots sink into the unknowable depths of God. The Kabbalah was not for everyone. For centuries, its study was restricted to mature scholars, whispered only to those deemed ready. Yet its power seeped outward. In the Renaissance, Christian thinkers like Pico della Mirandola integrated Kabbalistic ideas into their own search for universal truth. Even here, though, suspicion followed. Too close to hidden power, too far from orthodoxy, the Kabbalists were sometimes embraced, sometimes shunned. Ask yourself, why do we fear hidden maps of the divine? Why does society prefer a flat surface when the soul craves depth? You know this tension. Every time you sensed there was more to reality, an unseen dimension, and yet were told to be reasonable, you have felt the same pressure that Kabbalists endured. Then came Agrippa. In 1531, Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa published 3 books of occult philosophy. This was not a dusty manual of superstition, but a grand synthesis. Astrology, alchemy, angelology, and Kabbalah woven together under the light of Christian theology. To him, nature itself was a living text, every plant and star inscribed with divine meaning. He wrote of angels and demons, of sacred names, and the hidden powers encoded in the Hebrew alphabet. He dared to say that by knowing these correspondences, you could align yourself with the harmony of the cosmos. To many, this was exhilarating, a vision of a world alive with spirit. To authorities, it was dangerous. By the mid-1500s, Agrippa's works were placed on the index of forbidden books, and his name became synonymous with forbidden magic. But here is the paradox. When knowledge is forbidden, it becomes more alluring. Have you noticed that? The very act of rejection makes the seeker's heart lean closer. Think of when you were told not to ask a certain question, not to read a certain book. Did that prohibition not ignite your curiosity even more? Agrippa knew this power well, and his writings survived in secret, passed from hand to hand like sparks waiting for kindling. As you listen, a pattern emerges. Gnostics silenced, Kabbalists restricted, Agrippa condemned. Yet in each case, the knowledge lived on, not in the halls of power, but in hidden rooms, in whispered dialogues, in the hearts of seekers who refused to let truth be buried. This is the rhythm of rejected knowledge. What is cast out returns. What is burned rises from ash. What is silenced finds a new tongue. And this is not just their story, it is yours. How many truths in your own life have been dismissed as irrational, too strange, or too mystical? Yet do they not return again and again in dreams, in symbols, in moments of quiet insight. Perhaps this is why you are here now, listening, not for entertainment, but because you feel that what was rejected by society might awaken something within you. If this speaks to you, pause and let me know in the comments. Have you ever carried an intuition, a secret insight that others told you to suppress? Your story may resonate with another seeker who needs to hear it. As the journey deepens, suppression only grows fiercer the closer wisdom comes to the surface. You will soon witness the fires of the Inquisition, the fate of Giordano Bruno, and the clash between infinite vision and dogmatic control. But remember, this is only the middle of the path. The flame burns brighter the more it is denied. You walk further, and the path grows darker. The gentle whispers of hidden texts turn into cries, cries of those condemned for daring to speak what could not be contained. This is the age where knowledge was no longer merely ignored, but hunted, judged, and burned. In the late Middle Ages, the Church created tribunals known as the Inquisition, courts of faith designed to root out heresy. Heresy meant deviation from official doctrine, but in practice, it often meant anyone who dared to imagine beyond the prescribed boundaries. Alchemists who experimented with the transformation of metals, visionaries who spoke of a cosmos alive with spirit, healers who used remedies outside ecclesiastical approval. Many found themselves accused, imprisoned, or executed. Pause and imagine. To hold a manuscript, to whisper an idea, could mean your life. How heavy would knowledge feel in your hands if it carried the weight of death? Among these martyrs of thought stands Giordano Bruno. Born in 1548, Bruno studied philosophy, but quickly transcended it. He envisioned a universe without limits, stars as suns, each surrounded by their own worlds, an infinity of life reflecting the divine. To him, God was not a distant ruler, but the very soul of the cosmos. Every atom shimmered with presence. Such vision was intoxicating, but also intolerable. To the Roman Inquisition, Bruno's pantheism, the belief that everything is divine, was heresy. After 7 years of trial, he was burned alive in 1600. His body consumed, but his words immortal. And here is the paradox you feel in your own chest. The fire meant to destroy him became the fire that made him eternal. His vision of infinity would echo centuries later in modern science and philosophy. Have you ever noticed how the truths that unsettle others often become the very truths that liberate generations? What you are punished for today may be what your descendants honor tomorrow. Bruno's death embodies this rhythm. Suppression breeds awakening. But not all esoteric figures met such an end. Some walked the razor's edge, evading flames while planting seeds of transformation. Consider Paracelsus, the Swiss physician alchemist born in 1493. He defied the medical orthodoxy of his time, declaring that the human body is a microcosm, a small universe, reflecting the macrocosm, the greater cosmos. Illness, he said, was not just a physical malfunction, but a spiritual imbalance, a disharmony between the inner and outer worlds. Paracelsus blended chemistry with magic, prescribing remedies drawn from minerals and plants, insisting that divine forces shape the processes of healing. He wrote, "Theology, medicine, chemistry, and magic are one and the same." To churchmen, This was blasphemy. To his students, it was revelation. Ask yourself, when you fall ill, do you not sense that it is more than just the body? Stress, grief, spiritual hunger, they all manifest in the flesh. Paracelsus simply dared to say aloud what we all quietly feel. The spirit and body cannot be torn apart. Though censured by many, Paracelsus' ideas carried forward, seeding the very beginnings of modern medicine. The rejected knowledge of his alchemical healing became the foundation for chemical remedies still used today. Yet even as such figures sought wisdom, society turned fearful. The witch trials swept across Europe between the 15th and 17th centuries. The infamous Malleus Maleficarum, 1487, or Hammer of Witches, painted folk healers and wise women as servants of the devil. Thousands were executed, many for nothing more than keeping herbal lore or practicing rituals of fertility and protection. This hysteria was more than superstition. It was the violent enforcement of boundaries. If you felt too close to hidden power, you were branded dangerous. Think of your own life. Have you seen how society sometimes mocks or punishes those who live outside its narrow definitions of normality? Witch hunts are not relics of the past. They live on whenever fear turns against difference, whenever curiosity is recast as crime. Through Bruno's flames, Paracelsus' defiance, and the witch trial's terror, you see the pattern tightening. The closer wisdom came to touching the heart of society, the more ferociously it was resisted. And yet, beneath the ashes, the embers glowed. Secret manuscripts traveled in hidden libraries. Coded symbols adorned cathedrals. Even in suppression, truth found ways to endure. This is why rejected knowledge awakens souls. Because in each act of suppression, it teaches you to look deeper, to question why certain truths must be hidden at all. And every time you ask that question, a door within you begins to open. If this exploration resonates with you, take a moment to support this journey. Press the like button. It may seem small, but each gesture spreads these forgotten truths to seekers who might never otherwise find them. Just as forbidden books once passed from hand to hand, today knowledge passes through algorithms carried by your participation. Because the story is not over. The fires of the Inquisition did not end the tale. As the Renaissance gave way to the Enlightenment, another battle emerged, not one of flames, but of silence. For reason itself would rise to banish esotericism, and the dustbin of superstition would grow ever larger. But that is the path awaiting you as the journey unfolds. You step out of the smoke of the Inquisition and into a new dawn, one not of fire, but of light. Or at least it was called light. The Enlightenment, the age of reason. Yet light can also blind. The fire that once burned heretics now became a subtler force. The cold dismissal of anything not measurable, not rational, not empirical. At first glance, this was liberation. Science began to soar. Telescopes revealed new worlds. Microscopes unveiled hidden life. But in the process, another boundary hardened. The world was stripped of spirit. What had once been alive with angels, correspondences, and divine signatures was redefined as mechanism, a vast machine with no soul. Imagine the shift. For centuries, people saw the stars as symbols, messages from the divine. Now they were reduced to silent rocks in space. Herbs that once carried healing spirits became chemical substances. Ritual became superstition. The living cosmos became an indifferent void. The Church and the Enlightenment, though often opposed, joined hands in one respect. Both banished esoteric traditions. The index of forbidden books, which had already silenced Agrippa and Bruno, continued to grow. Alchemical works, mystical gospels, and even philosophical treatises that hinted at occult sympathies were condemned. Meanwhile, intellectuals proclaimed that true knowledge must be rational, secular, scientific. Esotericism became the other, the shadow against which modernity defined itself. And here is the irony. Even Isaac Newton, the hero of science, secretly spent years poring over alchemical manuscripts, scribbling formulas of transmutation in the margins of his notebooks. Publicly, reason reigned. Privately, the hunger for hidden wisdom never died. Ask yourself, have you seen this same pattern in our own age? How often does society claim to be enlightened while silencing voices that do not fit its narrative of progress? Today, it may not be alchemy that is dismissed, but intuition, spirituality, the very sense that life has meaning beyond numbers. The same silencing continues, only with new language. But suppression always has a counter-rhythm. As Enlightenment voices mocked magic as superstition, secret societies blossomed in the shadows. Freemasonry spread across Europe, weaving ritual, symbolism, and ancient allegories into its lodges. Rosicrucian legends spoke of hidden brotherhoods safeguarding wisdom for a future age. The very rejection of esotericism gave rise to its underground revival. Then came the Romantics, poets and thinkers who rebelled against the cold mechanism of rationalism. They turned to myth, nature, and the mystical to restore the soul to a disenchanted world. For them, esoteric currents became symbols of imagination's power. The stars might be rocks to scientists, but to romantics, they were still gateways of wonder. And so the flame endured, not in universities or pulpits, but in art, in secret lodges, in whispered correspondences that link East and West, ancient and modern. It is here that the phrase rejected knowledge takes on its full meaning. Modern scholars, especially Wouter Hanegraaff, describe Western esotericism as the Academy's dustbin of rejected knowledge. For centuries, institutions defined themselves by casting aside what they could not accept. But a dustbin is not a grave. What is thrown away is not destroyed. It simply waits, gathering in the margins, until someone curious enough dares to open the lid. Pause here. Have you not felt this in your own experience? The insights you pushed aside because teachers, parents, or peers told you they were irrational, do they not resurface later, carrying even more power because you once rejected them? This is the same dynamic. The West defined itself by casting out hidden wisdom, and now we return to that dustbin to ask, what treasures have we overlooked? As you stand in this moment of history, the picture is clear. Western esotericism did not vanish. It was forced underground by the Enlightenment, but in that very burial, it preserved its potency. Like seeds lying dormant under snow, the teachings awaited a season of thaw. The rediscovery of Hermetic texts in the Renaissance, the unearthing of Nag Hammadi in the 20th century, the revival of Kabbalah and mysticism by scholars like Gershom scholars, like Gershom Scholem. Each moment proves that reject, and this is why your presence here matters. To engage with these teachings is to participate in their revival by listening, by questioning, by refusing to dismiss. You step into the long chain of seekers who have always carried this flame forward. Now I invite you, leave a comment below. Tell me, what do you believe is the most suppressed form of knowledge in our world today? Is it spiritual intuition, ancient medicine, forgotten myths, or something else entirely? Your voice joins the chorus of seekers who refuse silence. Because the story does not end with Enlightenment. You step into the present, where the shadows of history finally meet the daylight of scholarship. For centuries, Western esotericism was dismissed as folly, condemned as superstition, or hidden underground. But now, in our time, something remarkable has happened. The Academy itself has begun to open the very doors it once nailed shut. In the 20th century, scholars like Gershom Scholem brought the Jewish Kabbalah out of obscurity, collecting manuscripts and showing that mysticism was not a fringe curiosity, but a central thread in Jewish history. Others followed, until finally, in the late 20th and early 21st century, the study of Western esotericism was born as a legitimate field. Professors, journals, conferences. What was once whispered is now spoken aloud. And yet, as Walter Hanegraaff reminds us, this field was shaped by centuries of rejection. He calls it the Academy's dustbin of rejected knowledge. What modern scholarship reclaims is not something new. It is the acknowledgement that what was discarded still shaped the soul of Western culture. But do not mistake this revival for a purely intellectual gesture. When you read the Corpus Hermeticum, or the Gnostic Gospels, or the radiant words of the Zohar, you are not simply encountering history. You are entering a dialogue with seekers who lived centuries before you, who risked everything to preserve what they felt was true. And this is where the story becomes universal, because rejected knowledge is not just a Western phenomenon. In Islam, mystics known as Sufis taught an inner path, batin, often distrusted by rigid jurists. In Hinduism, the secret rituals of Tantra were condemned by orthodox traditions, yet kept alive as esoteric maps of transformation. In Judaism, Kabbalists whispered of divine emanations, while rationalists dismissed them. Everywhere you look, the same rhythm repeats. Orthodoxy defines itself by rejecting what it cannot control. Have you felt this rhythm in your own life? The insights you dismissed as foolish, the intuitions you buried, the callings you silenced, are they not the very ones that return again and again, knocking at your door? Here is the paradox that shapes your journey. What is rejected by society often carries the power to awaken the individual. That is why you are here, listening, because part of you already knows that the dustbin of rejected knowledge is not just in libraries and archives. It is also in you. It is every dream you ignored, every moment of wonder you explained away, every stirring of the soul you silenced for fear of ridicule. To awaken is to bend down, open that dustbin, and reclaim what you once cast aside. And so, seeker of forgotten truths, we come to the end of this journey, yet also to the beginning of another. You have walked with Hermes Trismegistus through the corridors of late antiquity, heard the whispers of the Gnostics, climbed the tree of the Kabbalah, stood before the flames of Bruno, followed Paracelsus through the unity of body and spirit, witnessed. By the end of this video, you have not only learned how Western culture defined itself by rejecting knowledge, you have felt why these rejections matter. because they mirror your own. Now I ask you, let this not be a passive encounter. If these words stirred something in you, let it be known. Subscribe to this channel so you never walk alone on this path again. Like this video to carry these truths further, just as seekers once carried forbidden books from hand to hand. And most of all, leave a comment. Tell me what hidden knowledge you believe the world still rejects today. Your voice matters more than you think. It may ignite the spark for another who is listening in silence. Because in the end, knowledge is never destroyed. It is only forgotten, waiting for someone brave enough to remember. Perhaps that someone is you. So tell me, have you ever felt that the truth you were meant to live was the very truth the world told you to deny?